Hey, this is Aaron Rabinowitz for CreativeCow.net. I recently had a gig that relied heavily on blending modes. Well, that and patience, but that's besides the point. And while I was working on that project, I jotted down a few things that I found to be useful in my work. Hopefully it'll help you as well, so here goes. When I'm working with many layers that interact through blending modes, or what are called transfer modes if you're a Photoshop user, I often find myself trying several different modes until I get the look that I want. One of the biggest pains of that process is time wasted clicking on the pull-down menu for the blending mode, finding the one I'm currently using, and then clicking on the one below it or above it. Usually I try to keep it in some kind of order, and if I accidentally click on the wrong one, then I have to remember which one I was on. It's all a big pain in the butt. Well, After Effects has some keyboard commands that'll make life a lot easier. If you select your layer in the timeline and hit Shift and the plus key on your keyboard, not the number pad, it'll cycle through the blending modes. Also, if you hit Shift and the underscore key, and that's the button to the left of the plus button, that will cycle through the blending modes in the opposite direction. So again, the plus or underscore key, along with the Shift key, cycles through the blending modes. Personally, I find this pretty helpful if I'm experimenting and I don't know exactly what I want. Man, that would be great when you're shopping for pants. I wish I could cycle through that. I hate shopping for pants. Anyway, I digress. By the way, if you're trying to cycle through the blending modes, I repeat, do not use the plus or minus button on the number pad. That's a shortcut for rotating a layer. Good to know, but not what we're dealing with here. Okay, another interesting thing about blending modes is that all effects are incorporated into the layer before blending modes are applied. So for example, if I have a drop shadow on my text here, and then I set the layer to the Add Blending mode, my shadow disappears because the Add Blending mode doesn't show any of the darker parts of the layer. So in this case, you have a choice, either a shadow or the Add Blending mode. On the other hand, this is a 3D layer. And if I add a light with shadows, as you can see, a shadow is cast from the text to the layer below it, while still supporting the blending mode. The blending mode does not affect the shadow in any way. So if I were to change the blending mode to something else, the shadow is still visible. This can make for some nice interactions. Oh, if you're interested in getting some of that color onto the layer behind it, select the layer casting the shadow and hit AA to reveal all of the 3D properties for that layer. One of those properties is called light transmission. Turn up light transmission and you get your colors to show through. But again, blending modes do not affect the shadow. So no matter what blending mode you're using, the shadow will look the same regardless. Okay, while we're on the subject of blending modes, I want to mention that blending modes can be used for other things than the usuals of creating interesting visuals. For example, I sometimes used the difference blending mode to line up layers properly. In this case, I have 3 separate pictures that were taken on a camera with a tripod. The idea was that we would be able to seamlessly put it back together for an animation. Of course, lining things up isn't always easy, but if you use the difference mode for all 3 layers, you can see where things are not lining up properly. The perfectly black areas indicate matching pixels. Once I'm looking at it like this, I can start nudging the image until I only see black in the overlapping areas. Then I know it's lined up perfectly. Obviously, I won't render this way, but it certainly helps in the setup process. Once you're done, just change it back to the normal blending mode and all is good. Anyway, as always, I hope these little tips help you in the work that you do. Once again, this is Aaron Rabinowitz for CreativeCow.net.